Um, yeah, guess can start. Welcome to today's Orchestration meeting. Let's start with Ceph ADM. So first on the list is OSD remove and replace. So we have um, we have a pull request open from me that's going to add some parts to the OSD remove core to the Ceph ADM orchestrator. Plus, we have a design document from Joshua, and the thing I wanted to talk is mainly because I've joined the dashboard bi-weekly Zoom call on Thursday last week, and we've also discussed who's going to be responsible for what regarding removing OSDs. So who's going to be responsible for draining OSDs mainly? It was basically out of the question that the Ceph ADM orchestrator needs to properly validate things before before Ceph ADM orchestrator is going to remove any OSDs. That's obvious, but who's going to be responsible for draining OSDs? And there was no real conclusion because it turns out that the dashboard Zoom call is kind of the wrong call to discuss this. And yeah, let's discuss it here again.
So the longer that I think about all this kind of tasks that need to be fulfilled for an OSD to be removed, leads me to thinking that it may not be the worst idea to have a separate manager module that takes care of all that kind of things.
Okay.
That could be then consumed by Rook, by Ceph ADM directly, and could also be consumed standalone by the dashboard, maybe, if that's necessary, some as a pre-validation step or whatever, if they want to do that.
Which means that the Ceph ADM orchestrator would not drain OSDs, just checking that they are already drained or empty.
Probably, yeah.
When we say we're draining OSDs, that's from the Ceph perspective, like moving the data to other OSDs, right?
Yeah. Basically setting the weight to 0 and then verifying if there's any data left on that OSD.
The new module would say it again. What would the new module do? It would own draining those OSDs.
So I mean, if you have a look at the full picture, you basically the steps are in the design document, but to reiterate, you basically set the weight to 0 if you want to be really paranoid, right? And then you wait for the OSD to be empty, and that needs to be happen in some kind of loop fashion, and then you need to stop it and do other things. That's probably outside of the scope of the module, but you. So in the past, we figured out that having lots of different options for draining an OSD and for accepting or for the acceptance criteria is, well, let me rephrase it. So when you want to remove more OSDs than just one, you can utilize this OK to destroy or OK to stop feature from Ceph, right? And if you pass it OSD 1, 2, 3, 4, it will maybe tell you, yes, it's fine to destroy. But if it's not fine to destroy, you basically have to remove only one OSD before, or well, drain it, and for the data to become available or redundant on other OSDs first before you remove the other ones. And that logic tends to get a bit more complex. And if we implement that in Ceph ADM, also Rook needs to implement that. And so maybe it's a good idea to have a separate manager module for these kind of operations. So that you just throw it a bunch of OSD IDs, say, well, make them drain gracefully, and tell me whenever it's fine to remove them.
That means the new module would call the orchestrator, basically an orchestrator module, and whichever one is currently active would then go remove the OSDs. Like if the Rook module is active, it would go remove the OSDs when instructed by the other module.
I would say so. Yeah.
Right.
Because the only thing that's different is how the actual container or process is removed. Everything before is the same thing, just Ceph operations and wait loops until it's safe to destroy.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds good.
May I ask a question? If that module is just about draining OSDs, why should it call the orchestrator? I mean, wouldn't the orchestrator call that module instead, or Rook call that module instead as preparation for the OSD removal?
All that way around, yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks.
So I wouldn't call it a module, but a Ceph command, wherever it's going to live.
Well, if it's
either in a new module or an existing module, the main thing is I think we're talking about a new Ceph command to manage the functionality of draining OSDs, right?
if I may add something. A command is useful for administrators on the console, but the dashboard, maybe Rook or the orchestrator would likely need an API to access, right?
That's the Ceph command interface. That's the API already.
Yeah. So, and the other thought I had is if that's a task that we want, or maybe the software wants to manage in a way that we want to pause the draining to reduce resources on the cluster and such, and maybe resume and review the progress. Maybe in that regard, it makes sense to have an interface. Like an API?
I mean, since it's potentially a long-running process, at least having some kind of progress reference is certainly helpful. But the rest is totally up for discussion. I mean, it kind of depends on how complex the operations and the modes will be that this thing can operate in. I mean, if you just say drain and then a set of OSD IDs, there is probably only be one query, and that is it done or not, right? Or to which percentage is this done?
The question I have is, do we need that fine-grained control of saying, please pause, please stop the process, please tell me where you are, and such? Maybe depending on those requirements.
You would probably want to abort it.
Yeah, and I don't even know if we can pause the rebalancing, well, specific OSDs. Can we? I mean, I don't think we can. I think we can just say, do not recover right now, but that's probably going to affect the entire cluster and not only single OSDs. Not sure on that one though.
Yeah, and another thought, excuse me for sharing my thoughts, so many of my thoughts. But is it resource consuming if more than one OSD is drained at the same time? Is that even possible, or does Ceph automatically balances that? Or is that something that's supposed to be done by the new module?
So that depends on your cluster setup. I think we should utilize that OK to destroy command, and that will basically tell you how many, it's more or less, I think, the OK to stop command, because that will essentially, stopping will essentially start draining an OSD. And so if you pass, or if the OK to stop command yields OK for the OSD IDs that you passed in, you can just drain them altogether. However, if the set of OSDs that you want to drain are not OK to stop or to destroy, you have to take a bit more conservative approach. Just, you drain half of them or something. So I would say the impact on your cluster depends on multiple different things. First of all, of course, in your configuration, how much you even allow the recovery to take up your bandwidth, and also on your cluster, how fast the recovery is and stuff like that, right? How full the data is, how full the cluster is, and stuff like that.
And before we even check for OK to stop, I think we can just mark OSDs as out, and that's what starts the movement of the data. And Ceph takes care of all that already, right?
Yeah.
For the explanations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything more related to OSDs?
One question is about, I think that Joshua, I think that you have talked about to have a new orchestrator module in order to implement this kind of operations, and to use this orchestrator from this orchestrator module from others. For example, from the Rook orchestrator module of the SSH or Ceph ADM module. Is that true? Is that the main idea?
I haven't really thought about where exactly this thing would live, but okay. If it turns out to be an orchestrator module or a manager module, that would be ideal, yes. So the main purpose, wherever this thing lives, is to reuse code for all the orchestrators, for Rook, Ceph ADM, and Ansible.
Okay. It's because, well, I think that maybe in this case, what we are trying to do is just to add a new operation to the Ceph OSD daemon. Okay, so probably to implement a new Ceph OSD drain operation in the Ceph OSD daemon could be useful, because well, I think that even to put the right flags in order to not use this device, and to provide information about the progress, maybe is the Ceph OSD daemon. I think that the best place where to implement that.
Not sure, because if you implement it in the Ceph OSD daemon, I mean, it would be obviously the lowest point, but if you want to pass multiple OSD IDs in it, you somehow need to aggregate the data that you get from each individual daemon. So something needs to be on top of that daemon.
Yes, but to execute operations for several OSDs probably should be implemented in each of the orchestrators, but calling directly to the operation that each OSD should be able to execute. That is to drain the OSD and to provide information that is safe to physically remove the OSD. Is what I mean. The operations with a lot of OSDs or that involve even different nodes, different hosts, I think that should be implemented, and I think that is logical. It's sensible to think that this kind of thing should be solved in the orchestrator level. But each orchestrator can solve this in different way. Okay, because in this case, what we're going to have is only containers, right? But containers that are managed in different form. So I think that probably is a good idea to implement a single OSD drain operation for each in the Ceph OSD diagram.
I think so. I think a drain operation in itself doesn't really make sense because you could either set it out or set the weight to 0, which is essentially draining it. And there is also this, I mean, the OK to stop and OK to destroy commands are already part of the OSD daemon. So the manager module would really just be there to aggregate data and wait for results and give you better data back that you can work with in different orchestrators. I think that's about it.
Okay.
And I think this is common for all orchestrators, independent of how they are actually deployed, either Ceph ADM or Rook.
I think so too, yeah. I think every orchestrator really just wants to say, well, that OSD because you know that there is some defunct disk in your cluster, and you know that this is a certain OSD ID, and you just want to, remove it, or, well, not the disk is not yet defunct because, but the disk is about to break, or you want to replace it for whatever reason, and then in order to have a predictable impact on your cluster, you want to drain it instead of ripping it out, right? And that is probably true for every cluster because they all operate on physical disks, right?
Sounds like a plan to me. Okay. Anything more related to OSDs in the orchestrator world?
There is a section in that design document that talks about replacement and reusing OSD IDs. So if anybody has a better idea on how to solve that, feel free to comment on that one. But I think it's out of scope to discuss that in that meeting here.
Yeah. Okay. Then let's postpone the Python package topic to when Sage is here. Well, a QI failure. I had a QI failure today. No inventory found on host Smithy 132. That was this. One moment. Let me have a look at the QA problem. What was here? Has anyone seen it before? Doesn't seem like it so. Okay, I will have to investigate further. Might be related to the specific instance, or it might be that we have a general problem with QA runs, or I don't know. Especially as Sage is basically the only one actually developing these QA tests for Ceph ADM right now, I am a bit out of the loop. Okay. Next thing is that we have a problem with a dependency of Remoto, which is called ExecNet, which is no longer in active development. And what do you folks think? It's about this message here. So ExecNet is no longer in active development. It has some bugs that is going to make it hard for Ceph ADM to properly provide SSH, provide good errors regarding SSH connections. Like if you have a wrong SSH configuration, like a problem with the keys or stuff like that, then you will always get a host not found errors by ExecNet, which is not really helpful. And but that's about it right now. The other potential problem is that we are going to have a scaling problem with ExecNet because everything is synchronous, and the only way to parallelize executions is to have a thread pool, a kernel thread pool. So that's not an immediate problem. But what do you think?
I mean, we do have alternatives, right?
Yeah, we can. There is an alternative called parallel SSH. Which is something that has a potential to be much better, a much better solution for our use case.
So did you have a look into swapping that out for in favor for Remoto?
No, I've just postponed it because we don't have an immediate problem. It still works, and the impact on the Ceph ADM orchestrator is kind of small or manageable, so I just stopped working on it or stopped looking into it.
It doesn't really creates a problem, but the usability really suffers, I think.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
If you, I mean, currently we only have like our whatever 3 to 4 node clusters, but in reality people have more than 100, and here and there a node goes down, and if that happens and you happen to query like the device LS or service LS or something, it will just bail out and tell you that your SSH configuration is somehow wrong instead of telling you that the host is down. That kind of sucks.
Yep. What's the user experience with Ceph Ansible? Because Ceph Ansible also makes use of SSH. What's the user experience? Do you get proper error messages from Ceph Ansible regarding wrongly configured SSH configs?
Yes, you do.
Okay. But that doesn't really help us solving our problem right now.
Does it what?
It doesn't really help in with a scaling issue that we have with Remoto.
No, I don't think it does.
No. Okay.
Just out of
Anything
curiosity,
else?
is it difficult to replace Remoto with a different library?
It's not difficult, but it's certainly non-trivial.
So something in between. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay, anything else regarding Ceph ADM? Nothing.
Yes, a
So,
question.
Jean Miguel.
Yes, it's just to ask. Well, I'm not sure, but it seems that it is only one file, one Python file.
Yes.
And what is the reason?
Yeah. So the reason is that we have a call in the documentation.
Yeah.
Well, let me search it. Installation and then curl here. We have this documentation part, which curls the Ceph ADM binary from the Git source repository, which has the unfortunate implication that the executable needs to be exactly the same as the file we are. The executable needs to be exactly the same as the source code, which means we cannot aggregate multiple Python modules into one executable. And I have a pull request out there to improve that situation by.
Well, is that well? I don't understand the reason. For me, it's not. I think that well, to have the same name in the executable and one file is. I think that in Python there are several solutions in order to install executables. So I think that not a good reason. I think my opinion.
I agree.
Apart of that, well, I think that in this moment probably it can be something that will be easy to manage. But if this tool is going to be more complex and more things are going to be added, and probably this is what is going to happen. To have everything in only one file is obviously a bad idea. Okay,
It's already painful. It's already painful. If you look into the source code of Ceph ADM, then you will see lots of stuff that should be already part of multiple modules. Like we have an implementation for logging, we have a command-line interface, we have auxiliary libraries, and everything is crammed together in one big source file. That's not the best way to structure a project that's going to be maintained for a long time. So we really have to improve the situation there. Review my pull request, please.
Yeah,
That's 32526.
3256.
I've linked it in the other
Okay.
pad.
I think we all agree that having one file is not the best approach, but due to historical reasons, I think it's still there. But that pull request that we just talked about is certainly a step into the right direction, and maybe even just having a Python package that you can install with pip is maybe the ultimate goal, maybe.
Agree with you, Joshua. Well, I think that everything is agree. Everybody's agree with that.
The problem with the pip package would be that the Ceph ADM Manager module exploits the fact that Ceph ADM is one big Python executable and not a Python package. So if
But
we
this
want
is
to
for
change,
make easy to. That is for make easy to execute Ceph ADM in remote module in remote nodes, probably.
yes, right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. But in the same way that well, probably there is a request about well, the requirement in order to install in Ceph in one node is to have access this node through SSH, and you need to copy probably a key in the remote node. You should well, a requirement to have Python installed and to have pip installed. And if you have these requirements, is basically the same. And well, we are not dealing with something that we know that is going to give lot of problems in now and in the future. So I think that is
I
just a
agree.
question to define clearly the requirements, and I think that are basic requirements, not difficult to cover in any server.
I agree. I agree. I agree. We just need to get over ourselves and actually merge it. And we need to have a good replacement for the Bootstrap documentation. So users without users that are users need a very simple way to get Ceph ADM. And we need to just provide a good location or a good way to install Ceph ADM without much hassle. And either that's pip install or that's curve from a location or stuff like that. I really don't care as long as it's easy for users to do that.
Yes, I think.
So quite frankly, they only need it once, right? They only need it once for bootstrapping purposes. And after that, the manager takes care of copying it over to the target host.
Yes.
So if it's a one-time thing, then that can even be, I don't know, distributed as whatever is what you can install the easiest. You can even like distribute it as a snap or whatever. I don't know.
No, that would inherent some huge dependencies.
I mean, just saying you can do whatever because people will only need it once.
Feel free to create pull requests to improve the situation. Please do. Yes, please do. Any more opinions? Anything else on Ceph ADM? Okay. So we have a daily orchestrator stand-up. The problem with the Monday stand-up, it's just half an hour before our weekly call. And what do you think about just canceling that Monday orchestrator stand-up and just canceling it in order to make use of this week orchestrator? Okay.
Sounds sensible.
Perfect. Look, Travis, you have anything to update from the Rook point of view?
Not a lot. Maybe one thing related to OSDs is that, and Sebastian can speak more to this, but he's working on reworking OSDs and supporting partitions and things. Seb, do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah. So as part of a big change to introduce the row mode for OSDs on PVCs, I've refactored the way we were discovering devices as well as the way we were validating OSDs or disks are good candidates to become OSDs by relying on the Ceph volume inventory command, which helped me to open a bunch of issues against Ceph volume so that we can improve the command. In the process, I also realized, and we have been discussing this for weeks now, that we were not supporting partitions, and I don't think we had a good reason why. We just had that really stupid check where we just keep the device if we detect a partition, and we don't have any reasons to do so. So now what we do is that if we detect that they are like file system signatures, we don't do anything. But we shouldn't be doing it. Ceph volume inventory should be doing it, but I have an issue open for that. So this means that once that PR is merged, people will be able to specify partitions, and Rook will pick them up, and then Rook will create OSDs, as well as using all devices true. And if we detect that there is a partition, then we will use it if available.
Right, and by adding support for partitions, maybe an important point is we want to remove support for directories or basically file store OSDs.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
and legacy Rook OSDs as well. So it's a bunch of removal.
yeah. So we'll just have the blue store OSDs on devices and partitions going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise I couldn't think of something worth bringing up here on the Rook side. Yeah, other than UPR for the Python Rook client, which probably need to review again. Yeah, do you have an update on your PR on the
Yes,
Python
I have.
client?
7 hours ago.
That's good. I'm still catching up today, so take a look again at that.
Okay. Do we have anything else? Any topics? Okay, then let's close it and see you either tomorrow or next week. Enjoy.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good week.